Hi there, welcome to Conversations, where we seek to advance your leader and team excellence by discussing relevant topics that impact today's organizations. Welcome to the show. Hey there, leader. In today's conversation, we'll be shining the light on a topic that until recent days you may not have taken very seriously. Today's show, keeping patients safe as a top priority, will give us an opportunity to visit with an experienced healthcare leader in the field of infection prevention. Hi there, I'm Dr. Kelly Whelan, and today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you to Mr. Gregory Gagliano. Let's learn a little bit about Mr. Gagliano before we bring him on. Gregory earned a Bachelor of Science in Nursing in 1991, is a registered nurse in Cleveland, Ohio, and is currently enrolled in a master's program in health system leadership. He has worked at two large Cleveland area hospitals over his career as a neonatal intensive care nurse, research coordinator in the genomic medicine and infectious disease fields before taking his current role in the Department of Infection Prevention, a role he has been in for 11 years. He holds a national certification in infection control, served 8 years on the board for the Northeast Ohio chapter of the Association for Professionals in Infection Control, that's also known as APEC, and has recently been appointed to serve on a national board for development of standards for safe construction in healthcare. Gregory has had the privilege of speaking locally, nationally, as well as internationally on various topics throughout his career. Gregory, welcome. So glad to have you on the show. And, I'd love to say that this is just like a timely conversation, having a subject matter expert in infection prevention, to share with us, but it really shouldn't be. And I realize that, you wouldn't be in this profession without having a passion for the field. And I know that, I share in the concern for those serving in various capacities in your industry right now, supporting industries as well during this, ebb and flow of COVID-19. And so I just, again, want to thank you for coming on to create some awareness around infection prevention. And when I read your bio, I thought, who goes into infection prevention, right?
Right,
but
I know.
but I'm glad that you did. And so let's hear a little bit about, the backstory of maybe, how you decided to go into, the field of nursing and land in infection prevention. And then maybe just explain a little bit about what exactly is an infection preventionist.
Oh, that's a good question. First of all, thank you for having me and asking me to join you today. This is wonderful. And infection prevention has become kind of a spotlight in the last decade, at least
Mm.
maybe, and that is partially because payments have been tied to infections in hospitals, but also because we realize that um, we really are here to protect our patients. We don't want
Mm.
them getting an infection that they did not have when they got to the hospital, something
Yes.
extra that delays them or causes them harm or a longer hospital stay. Um, when I first became a nurse, I was young and then going to school and just try. I was actually pre-law at one point for the
Oh my
first year or two of college, and I didn't know. I thought that would be a nice career, and then I have sisters who are nurses, two sisters, and I thought, that's less schooling. It's a good job. It's in a clean atmosphere, clean atmospheres. I thought hospitals are not always clean, but it was they have good benefits. It's a good job. It's uh, definitely a job that will be there for decades and decades. And I felt secure in those decisions. And then when I got into nursing school, I really liked it. It was very specific and it was there are certain ways of doing everything. And that fits with my personality. That you just can't just choose to change a dressing in a certain way. There was a specific amount of equipment, a specific order of things, specific everything. And I have
Wow.
liked it. I really have done a lot that I never thought I would be doing. I was a neonatal intensive care nurse for a number of years, and those babies, they're
Oh,
so fragile, and I absolutely loved that job. In fact, it gets to me when I think about it because it's just
oh,
such a wonderful thing to do for these little babies. So I was a NICU nurse for a long time, and that kind of propelled me into my cleaning phases because these babies were very vulnerable. They're infants, they're premature, and their immature immune systems cannot fight off any infection pretty much
mm,
until they get older. So I was always cleaning all my assignments. I had 2 or 3 babies at a time, and I would always clean their bedsides with alcohol. I would wipe down everything with the counters and the drawer handles, and I take everything out of the drawer. So it's a neatnik thing, but it's also about a true, like you said, passion for infection prevention. And I had a couple of research jobs in the middle between neonatal and now. And that taught me, there are also certain ways of conducting research. It's very
mm,
orderly and planned. And I worked in research with the Department of Infectious Disease. And I think all this combined, the neonatal intensive care nursing, the research, the orderly way of doing things, and the infectious diseases that I came across and learned as I go. I'm still learning how this happens. But that I put that all together for this role, and I've been in this role 11, almost 12 years now, and I
so
think it's a
good.
great role. Infection prevention is a very well respected community within the hospital systems, and we weren't always called infection preventionists because actually preventionist is not even a real word. Every time I type it, spell check lets me know this isn't really a word, but I leave it because that's our title. A national organization has determined this is our new title. We used to be called infection control, but they wanted us to prevent rather than
Yes,
control infections. And I actually think that's a good change. So that's where
yes.
all that came about. And infection prevention is we do more than just teach people how to wash hands. We come up with best practices for
Mm,
everything you can imagine that happens in a hospital. How do you enter a room? When do you do hand hygiene after touching a computer? When do we need isolation, gowns,
yes.
gloves, masks? How do you insert a central line into a patient? What
Oh my
procedures need to take
goodness.
place? What prep on the skin? What is in the kit? Who needs to wear a mask? How far do you need to be? So the filtration systems in hospitals, are scheduled. They do a certain number of air exchanges per hour. So these are just examples of the
Wow.
the, the breadth of an infection preventionist.
That is just amazing, So first, I hear, you go from being a law student
Yeah.
to going into nursing,
Yeah.
having a love of these babies, and just really trying to protect those infants who are so fragile, and then moving on to where you are today. So that's a beautiful story of how you've really
Thank you.
landed into what seems to be a calling for you,
It
on
is.
the progress of it all. And I
Yeah.
know, when I've visited a healthcare facility, I was kind of thinking back as I was getting ready to have you on, and I'm thinking, okay, when I recently visited somebody in the hospital, so I entered and I hit all kinds of kind of checkpoints. So when
Yeah.
I first got to the facility, there was a valet and a parking attendant. There was a greeter at the door. There was a security
Hmm.
person who scanned my ID. I walked into the gift shop. I stopped at the coffee
Yeah.
shop. All this before even pushing an elevator button. So I
Right.
can only imagine the intricacies of the work that you do. And I
Mhm.
imagine that, and it sounds like during this conversation that we're having, is that there's a lot of moving parts in the
Yeah.
healthcare setting that most people don't realize. So
Oh,
I'd love
yeah.
to hear a little bit more about how your role interacts, and you've touched on that a little bit, but are there any
Hmm.
other maybe examples that you can give us?
Sure. We interact with almost every person, every department in the hospital. We are constantly providing education and resources and help.
Mm,
We're all one team. We are all in
I
it
love that.
together, and we all are working toward the same goal. Whether you are, a person who receive supplies from a truck on the dock, or you are the surgeon cutting a nerve inside a patient's body. We are all working toward the same goal, to help patients. And it's wonderful. So we do a lot of education for all the groups. Take, for instance, patient transport. Those are wonderful people. We typically hire people who are personable, because it's nice to talk to the patients if
Sure
you
is.
can during the transport, and it makes them feel like, oh, I have a friend with me, kind of. But those patient transporters come in contact with any number of pathogens, bacteria, viruses, throughout their day. The wheelchairs, the carts that they transport people on, it's so many intricacies, as you say. Every step needs to be patterned and formulated, and there's got to be a process put in place for how you do everything in a hospital. It's very detailed, and it's not meant to be rigid. It's meant to be protective for our
Yes.
patients.
Yeah.
It's not because we like rules and we want you to do what we say. It's for a really good reason. But we interact with every person in the hospital. And now, the past few years, especially, and especially now with the COVID-19 situation, infection prevention is like the center of all the questions and activity and planning that goes on. So we interact with everybody, and I think it's wonderful. And people know I cover a certain institute within the hospital, and people know to call me first with questions, and they do, believe me, which is wonderful. I want to collaborate. I'm always telling people, I say, hey, this is great. Thanks for your questions. I appreciate you bringing this up. And it doesn't matter to me what question you have. If it's a question that I can help with, I'm there. I just had to call a couple of patients back. They didn't ask specific questions about what's going on in the hospital. They had a personal question, and it's not something that I would normally do, but I called them back because I thought these people just are scared, and they just need 5 minutes on the phone with someone to help them. So it's not only within the
So
hospital,
good.
it's community outreach and helping people when we can, do whatever we can, to just make people feel comfortable, safe, and prevent infections.
Yeah, so important, and that just speaks to the heart that I believe that you have just during this conversation of
Yeah.
really somebody who's reaching out, who is scared. These are scary times and things are uncertain, and I think as a leader, being able to let people rest and allow them to hear our voice, and that yes, there are concerns, but we're going to get through this, and I love that you say. That we're doing it together, that you all have the same goal, and that should be across organizations. Right. It's like, okay, we have a common goal, and let's work together regardless of what industry you're in. Right.
I what comes to mind is something you mentioned in your talks and in your book, that everyone is a leader.
Yes,
there's a leader in everyone, and I absolutely love that, because even if you're not in a titled position of leadership, you can lead by example. How you go about your day, how you do your job. Do you follow what you're supposed to? Do you, take seriously? Do you have a good work ethic? Things like that. You come across people in life who are just wonderful examples of leadership without even realizing it. And what we call here at the hospital, we have what we like to call 200% accountability. You're not only responsible to keep yourself to the rules and follow what you're supposed to and do the right thing at all times, you're also responsible for telling other people and reminding people. If someone walks into a patient room and you don't see them do hand hygiene or wash their hands, it's kind of your responsibility to say, hey, I see you didn't, would you mind, in a nice, friendly way.
That's right.
Nobody's getting anybody in trouble. We're just helping each other, because we all get busy. We all get distracted. And we all need reminders, and we all need to help each other. So that's the way I see it. And I try to go with that. I always, I'm not trying to talk myself up. I'm just trying to say that I try very hard to let people know that we are all equal. We're all coming at it from different perspectives and have different knowledge in our brains. We can put all that together for this specific instance and lead this person toward health.
That's right.
That's the goal.
Yes, that is so good. That is
Yeah.
so good.
So thanks.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's a good job. We belong to a national organization for infection prevention, and it meets. They have an annual conference, and they have local chapters. And I've been involved with the local chapter of APIC, Association for Professionals in Infection Control, for about 9 out of the 11 years that I've been in infection
Mhm.
prevention. And it's just a rewarding experience to collaborate and network when we meet. How does your handle? How does your hospital handle this situation?
Yes.
What are you doing now? And especially with the COVID-19 situation, we are always asking each other what
Mm.
the other one is doing to develop best practices. We're helping
Yes.
each other. We're not competing anymore. We're one nation trying to help.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. We are one
Yeah.
nation trying to help. So
Hmm.
good. And if the audience who's listening to this, if you could take one thing, let's remember
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It's really good.
You also talked, in your bio about how, this healthcare construction. And when I think of
Hmm.
construction, I think of building. So I'd love for you
Yeah.
maybe to tell us about, how healthcare construction relates to preventing these infections that you've talked about.
Very good topic. Interesting. Hospitals are always upgrading. They're always building on, adding on. They need to draw customers in, so to speak, and
Mhm.
they want everybody to have a clean and attractive atmosphere in which to receive healthcare. So we're always doing renovations, construction projects, whether it's changing all the light switches to a new brand that may save energy by turning the lights off when someone leaves the room, or building an entire new unit, or taking out old cabinets from an OR and replacing them with
Mm,
newer upgraded models that you know can store different things or function differently, maybe have different button push to really seriously. We're getting so advanced with these things. We need to constantly upgrade our hospitals. If there's a leak above the ceiling tile, we need a specific way of how do you go about bringing the equipment you need, containing the
right.
area. How do you pop the tile when it may not be a well-known uh, thing, but when someone pops a ceiling tile, if you on these drop ceilings that are all over hospitals, if you pop a ceiling tile, you are releasing thousands of particles of fungus and bacteria immediately that you cannot
Who
see.
knew?
Well, you don't, because you don't see them, and there's dust up above ceilings. There's fungus growing, and it's okay because it's contained up there. It's not to the point where it's going to creep out and you know invade. But if you open the ceiling, you let out a lot of things. So we have a process in place. You need to get the right equipment, and you need to use what's called an environmental containment unit. It's a mobile unit.
Mm,
It's interesting. It's like a little tent, and you wheel it up underneath the ceiling tile, and you raise it up, and there's a rubber seal along the ceiling, and the person inside is protected by wearing a mask and gloves and goggles if they
right.
need to. And they pop the ceiling tile, they do whatever work needs to be done, and then you put the ceiling tile back, and the person comes out, and they're either vacuumed off or they change clothes. It's all very systematic, but even things that nobody thinks about like that
I wouldn't
are
have
are
thought of
very.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important. And I was in a pharmacy one time, and I am an infection preventionist, and I was in this pharmacy, and I noticed somebody up on a ladder getting ready to pop a ceiling tile. There was no containment unit, and I actually said something, even though I had no business. It wasn't my place, so to speak. But in fact, it was my place, because I know this should not be taking place in a pharmacy where
Yeah,
people are getting medications. If you pop that ceiling
that's
tile,
right.
fungus can be falling into on top of cabinets, which can be transferred to bottles and medications that people are taking.
Hmm.
And immunocompromised people whose immune systems are not up to par and not able to fight off infection, one microscopic piece of fungus can infect them and kill them. This is
Wow.
why we have to take every precaution. We don't all need to live in a plastic bubble, but we need to be reasonable, and with evidence-based practice, put in
Hmm.
place best practices to prevent infections and help people get better.
Yeah, that is such a great story. And kind of, this might be a little off track, but
That's okay.
I'm like, okay, I wonder how it is living with an infection preventionist.
Oh, that's a good, it's funny. You know what? It is, we do tend to be kind of germaphobes, but we really also, a lot of us at least, have a realization and a knowledge that, we're not in a hospital setting when we're at home, and we do follow best practices. I like neat, clean atmosphere like anybody, like most people. Yeah, you do too. So, we're not crazy about it, but some people are. But we do all carry Purell, I'll tell you that, or hand sanitizer of some sort. Because it's always, you don't know what you're touching in restaurants.
Oh
Every
my
day, we touch things that are contaminated. Restaurant menus, that has to be one of the most contaminated. People are handling them. They're never clean. You see food smudges on
yes,
some menus, and it's, if you go to a nicer restaurant,
yes,
hopefully you don't see that, but some places you do. So you have to be very careful at all times. You can't carry wipes and wipe everything down in a restaurant, but you can take care and clean your own hands. That's the key. No matter what you
mm,
touch, if you use hand sanitizer right afterwards, your hands are clean. And if you go to a pump that someone else just used, if it's on, say, the counter or something, and you squirt hand sanitizer, people ask, well, I just touched the handle that was contaminated.
yeah,
But on the other hand, you're squirting hand sanitizer in your hands, and you're going and you're doing the hand
okay,
sanitizing, and you're protected from that. Your hands are clean. It doesn't matter that you touched a contaminated pump. You're doing hand hygiene afterwards. So
hand
it's fun
hygiene.
living with an infection prevention. That's the thing. I think we can go overboard sometimes, but you know what? It's all we constantly have this thought process. We got to protect. We got, oh, how can we clean that? So it
Right.
works out well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, you can be on my team and in my home
Well,
anytime.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It looks like you have a beautiful, clean home. I
Oh,
don't think you
thank
need any
you.
help, but I'm happy to if I can.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
so what is the main goal, or maybe some goals of infection prevention? As far as the profession as a whole,
Hmm.
and what is maybe like where has, and I know we talked a little bit about the name has changed, but like
Yeah.
what has changed over time, maybe that you can share with us?
Okay. Yeah, we talked about the change, and I mentioned a couple things that we've done, but there's a lot that infection preventionists do on a daily basis, a monthly basis, an annual basis, and advancements are made. We have a voice, and
Mm.
American College of Surgeons, Journal of American Medical, Association, all these places, they take seriously what the Association of Professionals in Infection Control have to say, because we do the research behind it. We help with best practices to prevent infections. We trial products.
Mm.
We work with so many companies. I mean, how many companies, things that I never thought about, how many companies are there out there who produce hand sanitizer? And how do you
Yes.
make a decision? What's best? Which company
Mm.
will provide the best product and which one cleans your hands the best? But as an organization, we come up with best practices for nationwide, and there's an international APIC that I haven't had so much to deal with personally, but I have been to other countries to consult on infection prevention. They
Mm.
and so they join in with the Association of Professionals in Infection Control and Prevention in their country together and discuss things. And it's a worldwide network of best practices, and then we're always improving. It's continuous improvement. There's never okay, we're done. We have everything perfect now. We know how to do everything. That's never the case in any profession. Actually, there's always room for improvement. There's always an opportunity to look back, see how it worked, make adjustments, move forward
Mm.
with a tiny little, nuance change to the process or equipment or whatever we're using. And it always works out great. But as a whole, we are taken seriously. And I'm happy to say that, because there are a lot of times when, people say, oh, doctors run the hospitals. But nursing in general has gained a lot of ground in the past 10 to 15 years. And infection preventionists within nursing, most of us are nurses, not all of us. We come from epidemiological backgrounds, laboratory science backgrounds, and we all have expertise. I'm typically a pediatric focus. Someone else could be an orthopedic focus. And I don't deal with the things that the orthopedist nurse does. So we all really have really good knowledge that we can use together to help develop these best practices. And I love the collaboration. It's wonderful.
I hear that. Yes.
Yeah.
Better together, right?
Better together. I love that. Yes.
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 Yeah.
So that's great. But I love infection prevention. I think it's a great career. And I'm getting more calls and pages this week with COVID-19 situation than anyone could possibly imagine. And I love when I'm able to answer a question and help somebody. And if I need to go to the floor to explain to a parent why everybody's wearing a mask when they enter a room, it helps me feel good to know that I'm helping people calm and understand and realize that there's a reason behind all this. It's not just willy-nilly, we're putting on masks just because we don't know what to do. It's very, very well thought out, science-based, evidence-based, and we have excellent leadership from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and World Health Organization.
Yes.
We rely on their expertise, but we all collaborate, we all talk every day. We have meetings twice a day. I'm sorry. We have hour-long meetings on updates for COVID.
I
And
imagine.
it's a big deal. It's a big deal. We are waiting for a potential surge that we hope never happens, but we have to be prepared. There are, like, the situation came up last week. What do we do if a mother comes in who is delivering and has COVID-19? We know how to protect ourselves and treat the patient, the mother. Then when the baby comes out, what do we do? Do we allow it to room in with the mother? Do we allow the mother to breastfeed? Can she hold her baby? These are all
so many
thoughts that need to,
questions.
every little scenario. So we try to be as prepared for everything that we can along the way, because there are going to be probably scenarios that we didn't think of coming up, but we can help at the time. At least we'll be as prepared as we can be.
Yeah. All these teachable moments, right?
Yes. Yes.
Even in crisis, we find that, as leaders, yes, we're going to be coming up upon things that, we've never had to deal with COVID-19.
Yeah.
This is a new strain, right? And so,
Right.
okay, now how do we look at what we're doing? And just like you're saying, how are we prepared now for the future?
Right.
Yeah.
The coronavirus that we're experiencing now worldwide is a relative of the MERS and SARS viruses that went around during the different years. But this one has spread much further and much more quickly and is easier to spread than those other strains. This is a new strain of a coronavirus that is to date unseen, and we all have been feeling the effects and hearing the horrible news about all these people being infected and dying. We don't know. I mean, there are stories of, say, one person, two people, twins, for instance, can get a coronavirus, and one person can have, I just have a mild fever and a cough, and the other person can be put in a hospital on a ventilator. You don't know how it's going to affect your body versus the next person. So that's why it's a scary thing, and we have to protect everybody from getting it, hopefully, in the first place. We're trying. Numbers are rising, but hopefully they will plateau and start to go down very soon, because everything is shut down. The world is shut down.
The world
and
is shut down.
It's scary. But from my perspective in the hospital, we have to be prepared for a surge in case it comes, and we're doing the right thing. And we're a lot of good people doing a lot of good work here. So very happy to report.
Yes, that's awesome. And so let's just maybe end on, what are some practical tips for leaders, regardless of the field they're in? They don't have to be in the healthcare industry, but what might be some, practical tips for to practice prevention, whether it's, now during this, or even in the future when everybody returns back to work, everything is back to, status quo. What might leaders be able to implement into their organizations?
Well, if they don't already have it, that's a very good question. If they don't already have things put in place, such as, you know, stay at home if you're ill, screening people, making sure that everybody is 200% accountable. If you see your coworker coughing and sneezing and just hacking and is feeling miserable, and you can feel free to say, are you feeling okay? Do you need to go home? And I think people need to be understanding that, leaders need to be understanding that some people may need to go home.
Mm.
It's not doing anyone a favor to have an ill employee in any setting, anywhere. It's a potential to spread illness. And look, we didn't know that coronavirus was going to be like this. The first person who may have gone to work spread it to those people. They took it home to their families. That's how this starts. And we need to prevent that. I think that having hand sanitizer available for employees, no matter what business you're in, computers are sometimes shared. Who knows who just
Yes.
touched that computer? We have, the person, say, who goes around delivering packages should have hand sanitizer available. Everything, hand hygiene is the basic mechanism, but really we need to protect everybody, and any employee who is ill needs to be home, needs to stay home. That's an important thing until they're better or until their doctor clears them, whatever your company policy is. And certain illnesses are different. If it's just a cold and they get better, you're supposed to stay home until you have no fever for 24 hours. That's the baseline.
No
Or
fever for 24 hours.
right. And
Baseline.
right, and resolution of symptoms. If you're coughing and vomiting or having some illness, you need to be back to baseline before you go to work. That's a basic thing that I think all leaders, and I think people need to understand that. I know it's a loss of productivity, maybe a loss of money for the company, and some people don't have a lot of time off that they can take when they're ill. So companies need to be very understanding of people and
Mm.
realize they're home because they're ill. They're not home because they just want a day off, and they're losing money themselves. Some employees don't have insurance. Some employees don't get paid if they're not working. So companies need to be aware of that. Provide insurance when you can, and understand when people need to take time off.
Mm. So good. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are definitely, just the practicalities. And I
Hmm.
think that, organizations are going to have to make this mindset shift if they haven't
Yeah.
already, as
Yeah.
well as, when everybody does return to work, let's look at and learn from the experience that we've had here. And let's see how
Right.
we can keep our people safe.
Right. I think that's the goal for everybody, and we can all help.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome. This has been just such a joy to have you on the show and share about, infection prevention. And I love
Hmm.
that you're an infection preventionist, because I think that, our world needs leaders like you that, step up and aren't afraid of, what that means, and to
Hmm.
be proactive in organizations, and to
Yeah.
be, teaching people and holding people accountable in a gentle
Yeah.
way by teaching them, processes, best practices,
Yeah.
really collaborating. So thank you
It
so
is.
much.
Thank you for having me. I really have enjoyed this. Thank you very much. I hope
Yeah.
that this continues on, and people at least take one little bit of knowledge from what we've talked about over the last 30 minutes or so and take it to heart, because infection prevention is everyone's business.
Yeah, I love that. Infection prevention is everyone's business. That's a
Yes,
slogan right there.
it is. It is. I can't take credit for it. It's not original, but it's a true and good slogan that I hope people remember and reuse.
We're going to go with that.
Okay, good.
All right, Gregory. Well, thanks again. Be well, stay safe, and continue
Thank
doing great things.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Until next time, this is Dr. Kelly Whelan. Keep doing great things, because our world needs leaders like you.